The year is 2008. Lehman Brothers collapsed. $600 billion evaporated overnight. Banks toppled. Millions lost their homes. Economists froze. The whole world asked the same question. How did this happen? But the real question was different. Why did no one see this coming? Here's a disturbing truth. Someone did see it. 900 years ago, there was no central bank, no stock exchange. Capitalism wasn't even a concept yet. But one man sat down and wrote, "When money loses its moral compass, first the markets decay, then the institutions, then trust, and finally, civilization itself." This man wasn't a Wall Street analyst. He wasn't a Nobel Prize-winning economist. He certainly wasn't a hedge fund manager. He was a scholar who lived in the 11th century. And he wrote this 700 years before Adam Smith. His name, Imam Al-Ghazali. Today, I'm going to read you his 1,000-year-old warnings. And your skin will crawl. Because it sounds like he's describing 2008. Like he knew about 2020. Like he's seeing the next crisis we haven't even lived through yet. The man erased from history books, yet perhaps the one who gave history's most important economic warning. Are you ready? To understand Al-Ghazali, one of the most influential thinkers of the Islamic Golden Age, you need to imagine a world that feels both familiar and foreign. The year is approximately 1100. Europe is fragmented and impoverished, still trying to climb out of the wreckage of the early Middle Ages. The shadow of what they called the Dark Ages hasn't yet lifted. But at the same time, the Islamic world presents an entirely different picture. A vast civilization stretching from Andalusia and Spain to Iran, and from there to Central Asia. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo. These weren't just cities. They were centers of financial and intellectual power. Trade routes bustled with caravans carrying silk, spices, textiles, and silver. Scholars debated philosophy, law, astronomy, and medicine. Markets were vibrant. The empire was wealthy. And wealth was transforming society at a speed no one could fully comprehend. It was in this world of thriving commerce and growing inequality that a scholar named Abu Hamid al-Ghazali emerged. Part philosopher, part jurist, part theologian, part critic. Think of him as the kind of thinker who could explain both the purpose of the soul and the mechanics of monetary systems in the same sentence. Born in 1058 in Tus, Persia, Al-Ghazali rose quickly through the intellectual ranks. By his mid-30s, he had already assumed one of the most prestigious teaching positions in the Islamic world, lecturing at the famous Nizamiya Madrasa in Baghdad. But what made him exceptional wasn't his prestige. It was his refusal to accept the status quo. He saw a world where wealth was increasing, where markets were expanding. But he sensed something was going wrong. A society obsessed with money, yet drifting from meaning. An economy flourishing on the surface, but rotting from within. You don't have to look far to see the parallels with the modern world. Al-Ghazali began asking a question few dared to pose. What happens when a civilization grows rich before it grows wise? And to answer this question, he turned his focus to money itself. Here's the part that surprises most Western audiences. Al-Ghazali wasn't just a religious thinker. He was one of the first philosophers to analyze money from both a moral and systemic perspective. Aristotle viewed money as a practical invention. Later economists analyzed it with mathematical formulas. But Al-Ghazali did something different. He examined money's psychological and spiritual effects on society. He studied how money shapes behavior, how it directs incentives, how it builds and destroys trust, and ultimately how it determines the fate of nations. To understand his economic ideas, you first need to understand how he viewed money. For Al-Ghazali, money was not something to be worshipped, hoarded, or used as a status symbol. It was merely a tool, a medium that facilitates exchange. Nothing more, nothing less. He compared money to a mirror. A mirror has no value in itself. Its value comes from what it reflects. Money is the same. Its power lies not in the gold or silver itself, but in enabling people to trade, to build, to cooperate. This is an idea that modern economists like to claim as their own. But Al-Ghazali was writing it in the 11th century, at a time when many Europeans still understood wealth only as land or plunder. And from this foundation, one of his most important insights emerged. Hoarded money is dead money. In his view, wealth locked in chests, hidden in rooms, buried in courtyards wasn't just useless. It was socially destructive. Idle wealth doesn't circulate. It doesn't feed workers, finance trade, or support families. It suffocates economic life. He described it as freezing the blood circulation of society, a phrase that could easily appear in any contemporary critique of inequality. But Al-Ghazali wasn't merely complaining about greed. His argument was systemic. When the wealthy hoard money, they create scarcity, not because resources are insufficient, but because circulation is blocked. Prices distort. Markets fail. People suffer. This critique leads to his next major insight. Speculation destroys trust. Al-Ghazali had no patience for merchants who manipulated prices, created artificial shortages, or profited from crises. He saw speculative behavior not as clever strategy, but as moral corruption. Profit without contribution. He wrote, "He who profits from others' suffering profits from decay." And decay, in his view, was contagious. Once it took hold, it spread through markets, through institutions, and ultimately through all of society. If this sounds like commentary on modern financial bubbles, predatory lending, or crisis profiteering, it is, just written 900 years ago. But Al-Ghazali wasn't anti-profit. He wasn't anti-trade. He wasn't calling for monasteries or vows of poverty. He believed strongly in commerce. He thought markets were natural and necessary. He believed wealth could be meaningful, even noble. His real target was dishonest trade, deception, lying, using false weights, concealing defects in products, manipulating information. He believed markets only function when participants trust one another. And when trust collapses, the economy follows right behind. In this sense, he was one of the earliest thinkers to describe what modern economists now call transaction costs, information asymmetry, and moral hazard. Just without the jargon. Another key insight was the value of labor. He argued that work is inherently honorable, while unearned wealth is spiritually dangerous. In his view, money earned through effort builds character, while money accumulated through manipulation corrodes it. This may sound moralistic, but the logic was practical. Societies strengthen when people contribute. They weaken when people exploit. But Al-Ghazali didn't stop with individuals. He also offered one of the earliest critiques of state interference in currency. Medieval rulers, like many modern ones, would dilute the content of gold or silver coins to expand their budgets. This was essentially taxing people through hidden inflation. Al-Ghazali explicitly condemned this practice that, in his view, debasing the currency was theft. It eroded trust in markets. It punished the poor who received weaker coins. It destabilized the financial system from the top down. He believed the state had a role in protecting fair markets. But that role was limited. Leaders should guard the economy, not manipulate it for short-term gains. He warned, unjust rulers destroy prosperity faster than any external enemy. And once again, the modern parallel needs no explanation. Al-Ghazali's warnings about rulers weren't born from abstract theory, but from observing the real behavior of real states. During his lifetime, political fragmentation was increasing. Dynasties were fighting for legitimacy. Local governors were demanding more revenue. And as always happens, when rulers felt their grip on society weakening, the first thing they squeezed was the economy. Some raised taxes to painful levels. Others manipulated coins to expand their budgets. Some seized merchant assets. Others borrowed recklessly and left the consequences to future generations. None of these tactics were new. And in Al-Ghazali's eyes, none of them solved the fundamental problem. He believed corruption at the top spreads like poison downward. When a ruler deceives his people, merchants see deceiving their customers as justified. When institutions don't act with integrity, individuals see no reason to act with responsibility. From the palace treasury to the neighborhood market, the entire economic order becomes a chain reaction of distrust. His conclusion was harsh but simple. A society can endure poverty, but it cannot endure corruption. Economic collapse is rarely about running out of money or resources. It's about the collapse of that invisible glue holding every transaction, every contract, every currency, and every institution together. Trust. When that trust erodes, even the wealthiest nation becomes fragile. And this brings us directly to the modern world. A world where Al-Ghazali's insights don't feel like medieval philosophy, but like a diagnostic report of our era. We live in a global economy where money moves faster than meaning. A world where wealth inequality approaches levels not seen in centuries. A system where markets often reward speculation over contribution. An age where trust in institutions diminishes year after year. An era where inflation silently erodes purchasing power. An environment where financial bubbles inflate and burst with predictable regularity. Everywhere you look, the problems Al-Ghazali identified echo on a global scale. His critique of hoarding mirrors today's debates about billionaires, offshore accounts, and concentrated wealth. His warnings about speculation parallel concerns about housing crises, cryptocurrency volatility, shadow banking, and predatory markets. His condemnation of manipulated currency strikes at the very heart of today's monetary policy debates. His belief that trust is the foundation of prosperity explains why nations with stable institutions, honest courts, predictable regulations, and transparent governance have stronger currencies and more resilient economies. What surprises modern readers is how little has changed. The technology is different. The markets are faster. The scale is global rather than regional. But the underlying human behaviors are the same. Al-Ghazali would probably look at today's system, the runaway debt, the speculative frenzies, the widening inequality, the political gridlock, the institutional distrust. And he would say exactly what he wrote 1,000 years ago. When justice is lost, prosperity cannot remain. This is an uncomfortable truth. Economies don't collapse because the numbers don't add up. They collapse because the people within the system stop trusting each other. Because incentives reward the wrong behavior. Because institutions fail to protect the justice that makes markets possible. Human emotion, human fear, human greed, human shortcuts. Not abstract economic formulas, these are the forces that drive civilizations toward crisis. Al-Ghazali wasn't preaching religion. He was describing reality. He understood something economists often struggle to admit. Money is not a mechanical object. It is a moral ecosystem. And when the moral framework dissolves, the financial system follows right behind. This is why his ideas matter today. In an age defined by record debt, speculative excess, institutional distrust, and financial anxiety, his core message becomes a survival principle. If money is severed from morality, the system will eventually collapse. Understanding this idea isn't just financial education. It's also financial protection. Because history doesn't repeat itself. But if you don't understand it, it will still crush you. If this video gave you a new perspective, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because on this channel, we'll continue exploring the darkest corners of financial history that no one else talks about. See you in the next video. Human emotion, human fear, human greed, human shortcuts. Not abstract economic formulas, these are the forces that drive civilizations toward crisis. Al-Ghazali wasn't preaching religion. He was describing reality. He understood something economists often struggle to admit. Money is not a mechanical object. It is a moral ecosystem. And when the moral framework dissolves, the financial system follows right behind. This is why his ideas matter today. In an age defined by record debt, speculative excess, institutional distrust, and financial anxiety, his core message becomes a survival principle. If money is severed from morality, the system will eventually collapse. Understanding this idea isn't just financial education. It's also financial protection. Because history doesn't repeat itself. But if you don't understand it, it will still crush you. If this video gave you a new perspective, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because on this channel, we'll continue exploring the darkest corners of financial history that no one else talks about. See you in the next video.